Wanda Briscoe, and her book is her journey with breast cancer. And so I wanted, when I met her, I just fell in love with her. My mother is a breast cancer survivor. Again, my best friend is a breast cancer survivor, and I went along that journey with the both of them. And so when Wanda shared that she had a book, I was like, oh yes, you have to be in my next Books Invite. So without further ado, I will have Wanda Briscoe come and share her story, The Fight Within.
Thank you for our connection. This book is near and dear to me. The title is called The Fight Within. And it's a journey of not only just dealing with breast cancer, but my journey in dealing with heartache, learning to forgive. 4 months after I was diagnosed, 4 months after I walked away from a 15-year toxic marriage, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I had to endure a divorce and breast cancer at the same time. So it was like, really, God? How do you deal with that? And I was getting my mammograms every year when I turned 40. And when I was turned 43, the doctor called me and she said, we need you to come back in. And I was like, okay, it's no big deal. I've gone back in before because as African-American women, we have dense breasts. So I went back in, and then they said, we need you to come back in again. We need to do a biopsy. It still never clicked with me that anything could have been wrong because I don't know of anyone that has had breast cancer. I was the first in my family to be diagnosed. And so I clearly remember on January the 19th, 2011, at 9:57 a.m., I received what I call the unwanted phone call. And I generally don't answer my phone if your number is not programmed in my phone. So I knew that the number was from the hospital. At this time, I was living in Atlanta. I moved from St. Mary's County to Atlanta in 1991, and I ended up staying 25 years. So I always say that was my extended stay. And I didn't move back to Maryland until June of 2016, June of 2016. And so my doctor, she called me herself. And then she said, Wanda, are you alone? I said, yes. And she said, we got the results back from the biopsy, and those 4 words, you have breast cancer. That's all I could hear in my ear. And I remember screaming. It's like I can still vividly hear the conversation. And then she said, I'm going to give you a moment to get yourself together. Because I was standing up and I fell to the floor in my apartment. And all I could think about at the time, I have 3 sons, and my youngest son at the time, he was 13 years old. And that's all I could think about was my children, and am I going to die? But then it was like God himself lifted me up off the floor. It was like a supernatural strength. And I knew that I had to fight. It's like I had to make a choice. Am I going to fight my personal life over here, a divorce, or am I going to fight for my life? So I chose to fight for my life. And I never had to fight for anything before. So that's where the title, The Fight Within, came from, because we all have something inside of us that we need to fight for. My journey was breast cancer. And every woman that goes through breast cancer, they have a different journey. Some women, it's in their family. For me, I was the first to be diagnosed. So there were all these questions. Well, where did it come from? How did I get it? But in hindsight, looking back, it was my Damascus. It was my road to Damascus. I had strayed away from God. So my journey was a spiritual journey. Sometimes God needs to get our attention, and you never know, like Jonah, he's trying to run from God. And I knew that there was a calling on my life, but I was running. And it was God's way of, I need to get you to yourself, and I need your attention. And so I went through the treatments. I've had 3 breast surgeries, and I chose not to do chemo. So by me choosing not to do chemo, the radiation treatments was radical. So I had to endure 33 rounds of radiation with 3 beams in each session. So my body has been touched 99 times with radiation. And it was hard. And then when I was at the cancer center, and I started doing research, because I was like, I'm the only one in the family. Where did it come from? And then statistically, it says 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer. White women are diagnosed more than African American women, but African American women die more from it. So I'm looking around, waiting for my treatments, and I'm like, I'm the only one in here. I'm the only African American in here. I'm the only young person in here. So it's like, what is going on? And each time I would get on the table, I never asked God, why did I get it? It was like God gave me a piece. Each time I would get on the table, I would always say, not my will, but your will be done. And that just became my mantra every day during the treatments. Not my will, but thy will be done. And then towards the end of the treatments, I was like, God, I'm seeing, now I started seeing, all the pink ribbon stuff. And I'm like, I'd never paid attention to that stuff before, but I still never saw black women at the cancer center. So I'm like, sometimes God will honor your private prayers. So silently, I said, God, let me be the face of breast cancer. You also have to be careful of your silent prayers.
Yes, you do.
I did not know that it would send me on a high, but it was a good high. It was a God high. And so I'm still in Atlanta. My parents and my sister that's here with me, they would come down and take care of me because the treatments had made me so weak to where the point I couldn't feed myself. My mom had to sit on side my bed, and the only thing I eat was applesauce, and she's feeding me applesauce. And at the time, my apartment was on the 3rd floor, and I had trouble climbing up the stairs and stuff like that. And so the first time I just started journaling, as everyone else has started journaling, because it was too much going on, a divorce, child custody battles, and cancer. It's like I can't deal with all of this at one time. People think that breast cancer is just a medical issue, but it's an emotional issue. It's a mental issue because it messes with your mind. And I just started journaling, and then my father is a pastor. And I gave him a breast cancer speech at his church. And one of the ministers at his church, when it was over, he said, Wanda, when is the book coming out? And I was like, what are you talking about? This is my journal. And later on, a publishing company from Maryland contacted me. Still don't know how she got my number. I just say it's God. And then she said, I heard about your story. She said, send me your journal. I sent her my journal. 2 months later, The Fight Within came out. And so I was traveling from Atlanta to Maryland twice a month. I've made 30 trips in 2 years, back and forth, speaking at women's conferences and just speaking at women. And then when I would come here, I would see an oncologist at Calvary Memorial Hospital. And at the time, they had a program called Survivors Offering Support. And the current administration didn't fund it like this year, so now the program has been cut. But that program, we mentored newly diagnosed women. And in Calvert County, the number of breast cancer rates are higher for older women.
Yes.
So that was something new to me, dealing with older, feisty women, and you're trying to get them to continue their treatments, and they have the mindset of, I'm already 70, I'm already 75, I'm not getting any more treatments. But in order for them to stay in the program, you have to continue your treatments. So I thank and praise God that breast cancer was everything that I didn't want, but it was what I needed. It actually saved my life because I was in an unhealthy marriage and my life was spiraling out of control. And so it was like God had to put me to the side because he had work for me to do. And it was for me to speak to other women. I go around and I mentor women. I have people that contact me that I don't even know. They're like, we need you to call so-and-so. We need you to speak to so-and-so. And a lot of times out of your misery can become a ministry. And that's what it has become, and to where this year I'm going to start doing breast cancer workshops, teaching women on breast health care, how you're supposed to give yourself monthly exams. And through the journey, God has opened doors through my writing, not only just through the book, but people have heard my story. One of my friends, she said, send your book to the White House. At this time, the Obamas was there. And I was like, okay, because she said, First Lady Obama, she's an advocate for breast cancer. I was like, okay. So I sent my book to the White House. Didn't pay any mind of what was, outcome. About 2 months later, I get a letter from First Lady Michelle Obama. on that she had read my book, and and telling me and encouraging me to keep going forward and sharing my story. And I was like, God, this is what you mean. You said your gifts will make room for you. So then I sent my book to the Potter's house. Then I got a letter back from Bishop T.D. Jakes on the book. And I was like, okay, people need to hear my story. Black women are being affected. How can I get my book out more and more? So then I started sending my book out to different breast cancer centers. My book is now carried in 3 centers across the nation. And I was like, okay, God, what more can I do? And so I'm now in a breast cancer group in St. Maurice County. We're called the Pink, Bold, and Beautiful. It's been established about a year now. And we had 7 members, and within the last 6 months, we've lost 3. So now we're down to 4. But it's been a beautiful experience to where God has me sharing my story with just men and women, because my story just isn't about breast cancer. It's about forgiveness. God had to show me that unforgiveness is also a cancer. And that's where I was at the time in my life. There was a lot of unforgiveness there. And I had to learn how to forgive people, because I had people saying, because I had walked away from a toxic marriage, that's how I got breast cancer. And to me, that was very hurtful, because I was married to someone in ministry in the church. And then, you having people say, well, you didn't pray hard enough. That's why you had breast cancer. So breast cancer gave me tough skin as well, because I'm like, I wanted to lash out, and I would call my daddy, and I would say, well, Daddy, that ain't true. And my dad said, just hold your peace. Let God fight your battles. And that was something I had to learn, and God was like, let me fight your battles. And so in the midst of all of this, God has set the table for the enemies to see the work that he has done in my life. Yes. And so, amen. Yes. So on last Sunday, June the 3rd, when you're diagnosed with breast cancer, you're on cancer medication for 5 years. And June 3rd, 2016, my doctor took me off of the cancer medication. So last Sunday, I celebrated cancer free. So I'm thankful for that. Cancer tried to rise up again this year. Through some cysts, and had to get surgically removed, but they came back non-cancerous. So, yeah, standing on Nahum 1:9, which is this affliction will not rise a second time. Yes. That's my testimony.
Can you take the scripture one more time?
Nahum, Nahum, chapter 1, verse 9.
Okay.
This affliction will not rise up again a second time. And I'm standing on that word, and I'm going forth. God has a work for me to do to continue to inspire not just women, but anyone that's going through cancer. And to also, I speak to caregivers, because you need to learn how to care for the person that's going through cancer. You need to learn what not to say when someone has been diagnosed with breast cancer. And so that's my journey, and I just thank you for allowing me to share a portion of my journey.
Thank you. Beautiful story, and thank God, thank God. You're so right. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she was 75. And when I tell you, baby,
they are set in their ways.
Yes, sir. So that's what the night and day. But thank you for sharing your story. Did anyone have any questions, comments?
I just have a comment. I thought your story. We talked earlier. Yeah. My mom died from breast cancer. She was a 5-year survivor before she died. She came back, and then she didn't want to get treated for it. And I think because she didn't want to talk about it the first go round. She kept to herself, and I think she felt like because all her friends kind of scattered when she got it. When she lost her head, they would say, well, they don't know what to say to her now. You're still the same person, whether you have hair, no hair, weave, ponytail, wig. But people have to understand how that affects the person that's dealing with it. And as a child dealing with a parent, it was hard for me initially. At the time, my 16-year-old daughter took it on better than I did. Like, I just was like, this just can't be happening. And my mom, she sort of just played it off. She went to the doctor, And then we was like, we always say, well, what the doctor say today? Oh, he said, I got breast cancer, I'm gonna get my boob cut off. And she just joked about it, like that's how she dealt with it.
Wow.
But I think inside, she was really hurting because she didn't get like no counseling or anything or talk to nobody. And she just stayed shut in the house while she was going through. She would go to the doctor, come in, and that's it. She wouldn't go nowhere. She wasn't talking to people, and I knew it was eating her up inside. But the more people talk about it and share, that's going to help somebody. That's why I say it's so important that we talk about stuff, because somebody's going through it, and they're going to say, oh my God, they're going through, or you've been through what I'm going through. But now that gives me hope that I can make it. And I think if she had that, when it came back, she would have gotten treatment for it.
You know, I went through a lot of self-esteem issues going through it. Being in Atlanta, everybody been in Atlanta, you know, sometimes extra hot. That's why they call it Hot Atlanta. And so with the radiation, the radical radiation that I had to go through, with one side of my chest was very dark. And so I would like try and cover my chest, and it was too hot. Wearing a sundress and trying to put, you know, something over. And I got to the point where I was like, look, it's hot, I don't care. But it gave me an educational opportunity, because when I would be out, you know how people look at you like, that's not really a suntan, but what's going on? When I would catch that look, then I would say, this is from radiation treatments. And then God would allow that door to open, and I would talk to women about mammograms and then ask them, have you had your yearly mammogram? Exactly. So what was a self-esteem issue, it actually became an educational issue.
What were the factors that contributed to you deciding to just go purely radiation versus chemo, or a combination?
I didn't know enough about chemo, and at the time, I was still trying to process it mentally. You know, why, you know, all these different options. And then when I started reading up on chemo, and then, you know, it was like hair falling out. I've always had long hair, but my hair came out, but not like it, I didn't go bald or, you know, anything. So I just opted for the lumpectomy. So I had my first lumpectomy, then my parents drove from Maryland to Atlanta, was with me for the surgery, stayed a couple of days, they drove back to Maryland, then the doctors, because they removed extra tissue when they do the surgery, then they gave me a call and said, there's still cancerous tissue there. So 2 weeks later, I had to do another surgery. Then they had to come back, you know, to Atlanta. And then several months later, I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt my shirt was wet, and it was blood. My breast was bleeding. I had caught an infection, which is common to catch infections. So then I had to have another surgery. So it's like that's where the 3 surgeries come from.
So did your oncologist like push just straight radiation, or it was a combination?
My choice.
Okay.
It was actually my choice. That's what I chose to do.
Excellent.
In hindsight, some women will say, well, they wish they had gotten a mastectomy or whatever, but I believe for me, I made the right choice.
Kelly?
Question. So what made you keep your faith? Was it ever questioned, your faith?
My faith was never questioned. My faith was strengthened. Because at the time, I had lost a marriage, the person that I had made an idol God. And that's a part of the testimony. A lot of times as women, we put men on a pedestal. And I had put this person before God. And God had to show me that he was God. So, and God was chastising me in my apartment by myself too. So a lot of times, it was like, that's all I had. I just had my faith. And I couldn't sleep, and so the doctor was like, well, here's some medication to make you sleep. And I took the pills for a couple of days, but I couldn't even sleep with the sleeping pills. It was like God just kept pouring into me, pouring scriptures from when I remember back in Sunday school, you know, and it was like, why are you showing me this? And I would just constantly write stuff down, writing all the scriptures down, old songs we sang back in the day. And in the scripture, I remember coming up, by his stripes we are healed. But when you 8, 9 years old, you really don't understand what that scripture means, but that it gave life at that time.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Excellent.
We're going to move right along, because I didn't realize time is of essence.
Yes.
We have 3 more authors, and we want to give everyone a chance to speak. I think we kind of had a bite to eat too long. But so next week we have author Sarita Lynn. We welcome her. Sarita shares her personal encounters and ableist destructive behavior for over 27 years and the consequences